Heavyweight is cooked. The heavyweight up-and-comer that everybody has been looking at, the blob hunter himself, failed at his mission and was the hunted when he came across the former baseball player Waldo Cortes-Acosta, and he got rolled on in one of the worst fraud checks we've ever seen, especially in the heavyweight division. Like, that is not a good thing to see, that the blob era potentially is still alive for heavyweights. Robelis Despaigne showed no takedown defense whatsoever. There were times where he was under in full mount, which is a very bad position. Waldo just laying the hammers on him, as Michael Bisping said, beating the drum, wasn't really picking his shots too well, but flopping his hands. Robelis would turn to his side, which will take away one of the legs of the posting for the full mount, Waldo's right leg in this instance, right? So hip escaping or even bumping and rotating would do the same kind of thing here, and all you would have to do is center yourself again and hook onto Waldo's right leg right there, establishing the half guard position. And from there, you can work into the full guard or try to stand up or reverse the position, whatever you got to do here. But he didn't even notice it. He actually got to the position and never even secured it. That right there showed me Robelis Despaigne doesn't know anything about grappling. And it may sound mean to say, but his striking even didn't look that good. For a guy who was an Olympic bronze medalist in Taekwondo, he showed very little distance management. It's crazy for a Taekwondo fighter. That's the thing they're known for. Distance management, how to fight at a range, pick at the opponent, go back and forth, side kicks and jabs and all that sort of stuff at you while keeping yourself at a safe distance. This guy went all the way to the Olympics in that sport, the pinnacle, and he fights Waldo even in the first round before he even got tired by overextending on his punches, running his body into Waldo to get taken down. He did that many times throughout the fight. The guy is at 87-inch reach and only used it for his jab, and he only threw that a few times in the fight. I mean, there were moments where he was lunging forward with a straight, getting so off balance, he's switching it to the opposite stance with his hands down. Can you imagine if you fought Tom Aspinall or Sergey Pavlovich and did something like that? He'd be sleeping for the next week. And he did it twice in the fight. 2 times. Getting completely off balance. His back foot is off the ground. Look how his body position is leaning all the way forward. His shoulders are ahead of his knees. There's not a lot of balance here when he's throwing this kind of punch, and he can be easily countered for it. All of his trajectory is going forward, and if someone were to have countered him here, it would have magnified the damage against him. And this is the way he throws a lot of his power punches as well. He's not grounded that much, which is a thing in Taekwondo. A lot of their punches like this, when they're committing with power, they will leap at the opponent sometimes. Parrying the straight inward, countering it with a check left hook on the inside would be a powerful weapon against Despaigne like this. Or even throwing a right hand over the shoulder, knowing that Robelis Despaigne is going to drop his punch, he's going to be wide open for a right hand counter that comes over his shoulder. The only shot he has at getting away from a counter shot like this is due to his reach, and that's it. But if you fought someone like Sergey Pavlovich, who's long himself, this would never fly for Robelis Despaigne. And in fact, you don't even need the reach. If you could just defend the punch itself, because he does telegraph most of them, he gives a very obvious look that he's going to throw some big power punch at you. I even believe someone like Tom Aspinall would be able to defend and counter Robelis Despaigne for something like this. And even Waldo in some moments was able to take advantage of Robelis throwing these kind of power punches, telegraphing them, and exposing himself due to lack of defense. I mean, look at this distance right here. Look where Robelis Despaigne is at. He's way too close. Why is he that close to Waldo throwing that right hand? He's in distance where Waldo can connect on him. And even when he's throwing the right hand, Waldo is leaning to his right side. Off of him leaning all the way to his right side, centering himself all the way back to his stance again, and then gets a takedown. It's crazy the lack of distance management from Robelis Despaigne when that should be his main thing. If there's anything technical about him, that's where you would think he's the most technical of his entire striking game. Because not only does he have the reach for it, 87 inches, which is the longest in UFC history, but he also has that Taekwondo background. The only good distance he had was on those jabs, and that was really it. It's actually kind of crazy, man. The best wrestler he's ever fought, and that's not really saying much looking at Robelis Despaigne's competition so far, and he didn't even know what to do against it at all. It's like he's never wrestled a day in his life. He didn't know how to get out of positions. His whole game is just attributes. I'm long, I'm strong, and I'm powerful, without really a hint of technique anywhere in that fight. The guy put all of his stats in attributes and none of it in technique. Man, that was a horrible fraud check, because we were hoping that Robelis Despaigne could be something interesting in the future, right? Change up the landscape of the heavyweight division a bit. At least be the guy that defeats all the blobs at heavyweight, and he lost to one of them, and not even one of the good ones. Can you imagine what Shamil Gaziev would do to him? Can you imagine what like Marcos Rogério de Lima would do to him? It just goes to show you, heavyweight is not even interesting until you get to like the top 5, where this is not really true for any other weight class besides maybe light heavyweight. Light heavyweight might be something similar there too, where the top 5 are the only interesting fighters, but middleweight, there's some interesting guys outside the top 5. Welterweight, there's a lot of interesting guys all throughout the rankings and even outside the top 15. Same thing with lightweight, featherweight, bantamweight, and even flyweight has some interesting fighters outside the top 5. The heavyweight division may be in its worst state ever since Andrei Arlovsky and Tim Sylvia were exchanging belts between each other. And the only thing that makes it potentially even worse in that era is the fact that John Jones isn't fighting Tom Aspinall at the same time. We have the blobs still around, doing their thing, winning fights, even being relevant to the heavyweight rankings, which is crazy. As soon as top-notch technical heavyweights enter into the top 10, not just the top 5, that's when heavyweight's potentially going to be saved, right? We look back in those days when Cain Velasquez and JDS and Brock Lesnar were champions. The heavyweight division was so different, a lot of interesting heavyweights throughout the top 10. But now it's just like, man, top 5 is really where it's at, and that's it. And the worst thing about all of this is, who's another heavyweight fighter that we're looking forward to? Not just the guys who are already established, like Aspinall and Blades and Gane, John Jones, but like who's coming up to shake up the landscape of the heavyweight division? Like, where's heavyweights Hamza Chimaev, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ilya Topuria, Alexander Volkanovski, when those guys were prospects coming up and we were all interested in them? We don't have any of those kind of guys in heavyweight right now. None. We might run into a drought of the heavyweight division very, very soon. Heavyweight might look even worse in the next few years when John Jones retires, Stipe retires, maybe Volkov retires, because we don't have any skilled fighters to replace them. The heavyweight rankings might even look worse than they are right now. There really isn't anybody. We thought Robelis Despaigne, because of his attributes alone, should be able to do something interesting at least, considering how untechnical heavyweight generally is. And that alone is a sad thing about heavyweight. A guy with only crazy athletic attributes makes us think that he has a shot at being a top 10 fighter. But it goes to show that he's even less technical than some of the blobs. And the athletic attributes aren't enough to even beat some of these guys. But the fact that he ran into a wall before ever going into the top 15 is crazy. So a lot of us were wrong about Robelis Despaigne. He was a pretty big favorite going into this fight. It was his second fight in the organization. Now, he is still rather inexperienced in MMA in general. He's going to have some mistakes there, but a big reason as to why he lost was because he had a lack of distance management, which is something that we expected him to at least have. That's a big reason why a lot of people now are being big critics against him for this fight, is because his biggest technical asset that we thought he had, he showed barely any of it, and it caused the downfall of this fight. And also, a lot of people probably had him as a parlay. Most people thought he was going to knock Waldo out, and hopefully he comes out better in his next fight, from the striking to the grappling, because he could still be a ferocious knockout artist. Now it's really going to depend on who he goes up against, even outside the top 15. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give this a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which is probably going to be the podcast. I'm just thinking about it. I might do 2 podcasts a week, if you guys are up for that. It seems like a lot of you guys enjoy the podcast, and it's something I enjoy to do as well. I'll talk more about it on my podcast episode. So I'll see you guys then, probably on Tuesday, as I got to do the history podcast on Monday.